Hello, MavMind Collective, and welcome to another episode of the HypnoSales Show. Today we're going to be talking about synchronous versus asynchronous communications. All right, if you work in a corporate world and you have a team that you work on or you lead a team, chances are you're using all different ways of communicating with people, all different channels, communication channels, email and text and Zoom calls, texting on your phone, Facebook even, LinkedIn. You might be even using LinkedIn to chat with different potential customers or with potential employers if you're trying to find a job or something. Like you don't like your job, you're trying to find a new one. You're going to be using all these different communication channels. And what I have found over the years is that some of us mistake different channels and we misuse the different communication channels. We end up causing problems for ourselves and for our team, and maybe potentially for the customer, for the company. And so if you want to avoid making these mistakes, you need to consciously think about these different communication channels and how to use them correctly. Because if you don't, then subconsciously you're going to misuse them like I have, like other people I've seen do in the past. So that's why I wanted to make this video, to kind of point out the differences between synchronous and asynchronous communication and why you should treat each of them differently. You don't want to use them the same ways like it might be easy to do. A lot of us make these mistakes because it's just easy to use these different channels the same way all the time, but they're not equal. They're not equal, okay? Email is not the same thing as a phone, the same thing as a texting or a video call or video chat. It's all different, so we need to understand. So I made a list here. We're going to talk about these things because these are where I've seen a lot of the mistakes being made. And I think that if I can help you understand at the subconscious level why we do this, you can raise awareness for yourself to the conscious level, to be conscious of this and actually take action to prevent these things, these mistakes from happening. And you can avoid making the same mistakes that I have and others have, misusing these different communication channels. All right, so the first one, phone is talking, email is for documenting. All right, so I had a really good mentor a long time ago tell me and the team that I was on, I don't want anyone using email to communicate synchronously with each other. I want each of you to use the phone to talk to each other. If you need to talk about something and discuss a topic, pick up the phone and talk to each other. Call each other on your phone. Now, this is a long time ago, whenever we were still using BlackBerries for the most part. That was like the most number one. That was like before iPhones or any of these smartphones. We were flip phones, and BlackBerries were like the corporate flip phone, if you can remember that far back. And my boss was telling us, just use the phone to talk. And then when you're done talking about a topic, discussing synchronously on the phone, because phone calls are synchronous communication, meaning you get real-time responses and you can listen to each other respond and talk to respond back. That's synchronous, right? So you use the phone for when you're done doing all of that, then you send an email documenting what you talked about. That was the rule. And I kind of adopted that rule onto my teams that I end up leading later on in my career because I thought that was some of the best advice I'd ever received around communicating and using communication channels. Because he was right. Phone calls are for talking. Emails are for documenting what you talked about, to codify what you talked about, the decision that was made. Hey, we decided on that phone call that this is what we're going to do. And we use email as a way of documenting that because email is asynchronous, meaning you can't expect an immediate response back. You don't even care if you get a response back in some cases when you send an email. You just want to document it and now put it in your inbox so you have it for your reference later. When you want to talk about it, pick up the phone and call me. Schedule a time to call me and talk to me. Not all meetings have to be Zoom calls. They could just be phone calls just to talk about things. So remember, phone is for talking, emails for documenting. The second point is context is everything. So the reason why you want to separate synchronous from asynchronous communication channels is that synchronous communication has more context. You can listen to the vocal tones. You can, in real time, you can pick up on what the context is of the person communicating to you. Versus on email, it has its own body language. And sometimes that body language is not the correct body language for the message that's been codified within the text of the email. So in other words, what the email is telling you and the way that it's telling you through the email may be different. So the body language of the text the body language within the text itself could be incorrect and incongruent. It's not congruent, it's incongruent with what it's actually trying to tell you. So you may end up interpreting it incorrectly based on how you read the email versus when you're listening to someone actually tell you. Because there's a million ways to say something, and sometimes if it's a critical piece of information that someone's trying to communicate to you and you can't hear their vocal tone and you misinterpret the context based on the email, you end up making a mistake and you get it wrong. And then you'll respond with another email back in return, and you'll send the wrong type of message back to them. And then they'll interpret that wrong, incorrectly, because again, they're not listening to you. They're just reading what you say, and they read into what's called reading into what you're saying, whatever context that they think it is, based on just the email text only, and then they respond again in maybe a way that's not congruent, and you end up getting incongruencies in messaging, misunderstanding each other. You just totally misalign on a point, and it escalates and it gets nasty sometimes, and it's all just because of a misunderstanding. It's like a bad or common episode of Three's Company, if you're old enough to remember that episode. Everything was a misunderstanding. That's what emails do, okay? So you want to avoid that misunderstanding, and remember, context is everything. So pick up the phone, listen to them with the way they talk, and pick up on the context based on their vocal patterns and their vocal tonality, which is way, way more effective and way better and smarter to do than to just interpret only from an email, and trying to turn email into a synchronous communication channel, which it's not. It's asynchronous. You're not expected to get real-time responses back, and you're not expected to understand the context of all this. So just avoid doing that. Stop doing that today, okay? The other one, emails and texting are not a conversation. When you email or text someone, most of us expect an immediate response. But like I said, it's asynchronous, so you're not always going to get a response right away. So if you think you're going to turn an email or a text into a conversation, think again. Because even though most of the time it might work, that time when it's most critical, like Murphy's Law or Sod's Law says, the time when you need that response to be real time, the prime time when you need it to be, that's when it's not going to be. It's going to totally not, the thread will stop, the texting will stop, right when you need that response. Think about how many times you sent an email and you started to treat it like a conversation as if it was synchronous. And maybe the person was replying synchronously or typing synchronously, and you were back and forth, and you start to perceive and mistake the email conversation or the text conversation as an actual synchronous conversation. It's not. You start to perceive it that way, and then right when you need that response back from them, that's when they stop responding. And then you're just left hanging. So don't even start it. Don't create that condition for yourself. Don't create that problem for yourself by treating it as if it was synchronous. Just stop doing that today. Just avoid using email and text as a synchronous back and forth. Pick up the phone and talk to someone, or get on a Zoom call, or do a Slack call. If in Slack now you can call and huddle and just talk to them so you can listen to them. And that way it's synchronous, and you're guaranteed to get the response you need before you hang up, okay? Now, the other thing too is phone and video calls. Some people say, hey, they're both synchronous, right? Because we're talking. Yeah, the audio portion is, but sometimes people mistake video calls to be like a phone call. And, sometimes you get on those video calls, you don't even use your camera. So you're just talking. So why did you go to the trouble of scheduling a Zoom call if you're just going to talk? Just pick up the phone and call them. Text them, say, hey, I'm going to call you right now, and just make it a phone call. And besides, everyone is fatigued today by having to turn on the camera all the time. So do yourself a favor and make it easy on the other person to want to talk to you by not forcing them to feel like they have to turn on their camera to see you. Because they don't need to see you to talk to you. They can pick up on the vocal tones just as well as they can see you. And maybe they don't want to turn on their camera. So make it easy for them to just answer the phone, schedule a call, tell them you're going to call them at this time, send them an invite and say, I will call you on your phone. Try it. You'll be amazed at how often people are more willing to accept your invites if they know they don't have to get on a Zoom call with you. They can just pick up the phone and talk to you in real time, synchronously, and just listen to you instead of having to see you or you having to see them. People prefer that nowadays because there's just so many Zoom calls, so many video calls. It's just driving everybody crazy. So avoid it and make it a call only. And then the last thing I'll say is that there's a new feature now I've seen in Slack and some other technologies and platforms called a video chat. This is where you record your video, because I guess it's so cheap to just make a video now and send it, right? That on a chat itself, you record a video and then you actually chat asynchronously a video of you saying a thing. Now, I think this could be, I'm not sure, this could work. This could work as long as you realize it's asynchronous, that you don't expect someone to video chat you back. But it could be a way to give more context. Like I said, sometimes people have context problems where they don't realize that the context might be missing. So having a video of you explaining something to someone might be a good way to go, right? If you don't have to share something and present something, right? Same thing with phone versus video call. If you need to share something with them, like a slide, you probably do want to have a video call. But if it's just going to discuss something, if you're just going to talk about something in real time, just have a call with them, or try this video chat where you videotape yourself and you send it as a chat, and then they can respond however they want. But just remember that, again, that's not synchronous, that's asynchronous. You cannot expect them to respond immediately right away in real time and treat it as if it was a call. If you need to have that kind of conversation, you need to pick up the phone and talk to them. So I can't emphasize this enough. If you want to have effective communication within your team, within your company, use the synchronous communication the correct way, use the asynchronous communication channels the correct way, and avoid making these mistakes that I've described to you today. And I know that you're going to learn from this, and if you haven't thought about this, and you're going to start changing how you communicate with everyone on your team and your company and your customers today, aren't you?
Thank you for watching. I know you find value in these videos, didn't you? Now, if you, like me, are in a customer-facing role, you want to get better every day at what you do, but you don't have to watch another video if you don't want to.